What happened to Netflix and Spotify in the Dominican Republic's digital tax chaos? Join me as I dive into the chaos of the Dominican Republic's digital tax and see if I can figure out what really happened to Netflix and Spotify. In this video, we'll explore the digital tax chaos affecting popular streaming services like Netflix and Spotify in the Dominican Republic. In June 2020, the Dominican Republic introduced a new digital tax, aiming to modernize its tax system and capture revenue from digital transactions. This new regulation imposed a 27% value-added tax, or VAT, on digital services provided by foreign companies. Companies like Netflix and Spotify, which offer streaming services to Dominican subscribers, were suddenly faced with the challenge of adapting to this new tax regime. The tax law's ambiguous language and lack of clear guidelines created uncertainty among these companies, making it difficult for them to comply. As a result, they had to navigate uncharted territory, trying to understand how to implement the tax correctly. The Dominican Republic's government argued that the tax was necessary to level the playing field between local and foreign companies, but the affected companies saw it as an unfair burden. The situation became increasingly tense as the government refused to provide clear guidance, leaving Netflix and Spotify with little choice but to take drastic measures. The new tax regulation had significant implications for Netflix and Spotify's operations in the Dominican Republic. Firstly, they had to determine how to calculate and collect the VAT from their subscribers. This proved to be a daunting task, given the complexity of the tax law and the lack of clear guidelines. Secondly, they had to adjust their pricing structure to accommodate the new tax, which would inevitably increase their costs and affect their bottom line. The uncertainty surrounding the tax law's implementation also raised concerns about potential penalties and fines if they failed to comply correctly. As the situation escalated, Netflix and Spotify began to consider suspending their services in the Dominican Republic, citing the unpredictable business environment and the government's inability to provide a clear framework for compliance. The digital tax chaos also had far-reaching consequences for consumers in the Dominican Republic. With Netflix and Spotify considering suspending their services, subscribers were left wondering if they would lose access to their favorite streaming platforms. This uncertainty sparked widespread concern among users, who took to social media to express their frustration and disappointment. Many users argued that the new tax would disproportionately affect low-income households, who rely heavily on affordable digital services for entertainment and education. Others criticized the government for its lack of transparency and consultation with the affected companies, which they claimed would ultimately hurt the local economy. As the situation continued to unfold, Netflix and Spotify made the bold decision to suspend their services in the Dominican Republic. This move sent shockwaves through the streaming industry, with many other companies watching closely to see how the situation would play out. The suspension was seen as a clear message to the Dominican Republic's government that the new tax regime was unsustainable and unfair. For Netflix and Spotify, this decision was a last resort, but necessary to protect their businesses and ensure compliance with the tax law. The suspension left many subscribers in limbo, wondering what would happen to their accounts and whether they would be able to access their favorite shows and music again. The pivotal moment when Netflix and Spotify decided to suspend their services marked a turning point in the digital tax chaos. The move sparked a heated debate about the fairness and effectiveness of the new tax regime. Many experts argued that the tax was hastily implemented and poorly designed, failing to take into account the complexities of the digital economy. Others claimed that the tax was a necessary step towards modernizing the Dominican Republic's tax system and capturing revenue from digital transactions. As the debate continued to rage on, one thing was clear: the digital tax chaos had reshaped the streaming landscape in the Dominican Republic, and its consequences would be felt for a long time to come. To wrap up, the digital tax chaos in the Dominican Republic has had far-reaching consequences for Netflix, Spotify, and the entire streaming industry. The new tax regime's ambiguity and lack of clear guidelines created uncertainty and frustration among affected companies, ultimately leading to the suspension of their services. This chaos serves as a stark reminder of the importance of careful planning and consultation when implementing new tax regulations. We hope you found this video insightful and informative. Stay tuned for more content on digital trends and let us know your thoughts in the comments below.